Hi, and welcome to another exciting and sexy episode of Alpha Omega. And in today's episode, we're going to preview a potentially very sexy camera, the Sony a5100. This is a very, I think, intriguing camera. It doesn't look very intriguing, on the outside because it's an entry level. And typically the most boring cameras in a camera line is the entry level because it's basically the most cut down, stripped down camera that they can give to beginners. Which makes sense because you don't want to have your cheapest camera be the best camera, right? What would be the point of that? But this camera actually, for an entry level Sony camera, is extremely well featured. Surprisingly, it pretty much has damn near everything the a6000 has. It has the same phase detect autofocus system. It has, well, it's pretty much the one main thing the a6000 had. Same sensor, same, so I'm assuming the video quality and everything should be the same. Actually, it probably should have even better video quality because it has the XAVC-S codec, same as the A7S and the RX100 Mark III. Although it's probably going to be the quality probably closer to the RX100 Mark III than the A7S because it does. I don't think it has the full sensor the full sensor readout. But yeah, having that higher megabit codec should help a lot in the 60p mode because the A6000, I feel like the AVC HD codec was it was good for 24p. But when it went to 60p, it really kind of fell apart. So I think having that higher end codec was going to help from that. I think what's really intriguing about this camera, and why I think it could be a big deal, is I think it represents the first move from Sony. This is the first time Sony has really aggressively targeted the entry level market, because typically when you look at Sony cameras, to take for example when the Sony went on the NEX system and you had the NEX3, the 5, the 6, and the 7. The 5, 6, and 7 all had pretty similar video quality, pretty similar features and functions. But then the NEX3 was cut down a lot. Video quality was, I don't want to say it's dramatically worse, but it was definitely not as good. It didn't have 60p. And in the 24p, it just looked kind of crappy. But when you look at Nikon, for example, their D3300, which is their entry level, and that camera has this, performs image quality wise just as well as the 5300. And I think that's really the way to go, is to kind of cut down on features, but to not ever cut down on image quality, because the entry level, I think, is going to be your most important market to win. Because if you win that entry-level market or that lower mid market, what you're doing is you're getting new people invested in your system. So if you can get that, you can get people hooked for life, you know what I mean? It's like when you sell drugs. You want to sell weed first because it's a gateway drug, right? You don't want to start off with cocaine. Not a lot of people who haven't never done drugs before are going to all of a sudden. But yeah, so entry-level market, very, very important. So it's nice to see Sony really aggressively going after that entry-level market. Because I think when you look at Canon's dominance, Canon's the #1 camera company in the world. They've been #1 for quite a long time. And I think a huge, huge reason for that is because of the Rebel T2i. And a lot of people point to the 5D Mark II because it's such a revolutionary camera, but the T2i is what I think got all of the younger up-and-coming people invested into Canon. And I know a lot of people that are Canon boys, they started off with that camera. And I think that's kind of where I think a lot of camera companies, for a long time didn't really pay attention to. And I think now they're kind of starting to wise up and go if we can get that entry market, then we can get these guys, invested. So I think it's really great that Sony is really aggressively going hard after that entry level. And yeah, it's an exciting camera. It kind of seems like it might be the best of both worlds. You have the great sensor and the autofocus performance of the a6000, but the a5000 and the NEX3s and the NEX5s, they actually had a lot of features that the higher end APS-C cameras didn't have. For example, they had touch screens, and they had on the lower end cameras, they had zoom rockers on the shutter button, next to the shutter button. Which, if you have PZ lenses, is kind of really cool because you have like it's a lot easier to zoom in and out. They kind of put that there because it's sort of like a compact camera kind of feature. It's kind of like a beginner feature, but you know, shit, comes in handy. And also having that touchscreen, I think, is a major omission from like the a6000 because like the most attractive feature in the a6000 was that really fast autofocus. The most like unusable element of that camera was the fact that you could technically select autofocus points, but in practical terms, it was so cumbersome that you would just have to always rely on the camera to choose for you, and that was always a pain. But having that touchscreen so you can touch points, right there, so you can actually select them, I think that's a pretty cool feature. So I think for a lot of people, this camera actually might be better than the a6000. The one major kind of like, caveat I have on this might be the heating issues. Sony cameras, I think if anyone's ever used them, they're very famous for overheating, consistently and constantly overheating. The newer cameras have controlled it pretty well. The A7S, as far as I know, doesn't really overheat. I've never had an overheating issue with it. Granted, I haven't used it for too long. The A6000 is actually really solid with the heating. At 24p, you can shoot for I've shot clips that were like 30 minutes to full runtime, and then shot another clip for 30 minutes and no overheating issues. In 60p mode, it does overheat though. So a5100 might have that problem. It's possible that Sony fixed it, but I doubt it. The a6000 has a bigger body, so it should control it better. So I'm thinking the 5100 is going to be worse. But I think, yeah, as a snapshot camera, as kind of like a B-roll camera, this could be a really, really compelling option for a lot of people. And I'm probably not going to review it because I have an a6000 already. But yeah, if it doesn't have any overheating issues, I think it could be a solid buy. And also, for those of you who have an a5000 at home watching this, please put in the comments section. Let me know, does it overheat? Because I think the heating performance on that camera, I think, is going to be a big predictor of how well that camera performs heating-wise. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say. Oh, for those of you who've been watching and know that recently I've had a lot of health issues, I can smile again. Still looks a little Botoxy, but at least it's there.